Welcome to Milk Market Tidbit for the June Dairy Products Report that the USDA released on Monday. And I'm a little delayed on getting this recorded because I really wanted to make sure that I had the export data to tie everything together, so I apologize for that. As usual, the Dairy Products Report actually ties everything together for a month, and so now we've got all the data for June, and it's always good to kind of come back and look at what the whole picture looked like. We're going to start with export. Right now, our data would suggest that we should not be very much in the export business. We had 4 months of phenomenal exports. If we look at the latest global dairy trade that was yesterday, it was actually up a little bit. It was actually forecasted to be down. Cheddar was up a little bit. Overall, butter was 288. Our spot price yesterday was 310. So again, not much exports there. Cheddar was $1.94. That was up 3 cents, but our spot's $1.90, so not much in terms of exports there. And what's interesting is non-fat dry milk is actually right at par, and it's holding. I thought for sure that would be dropping, but we'll have to look at that in the next few weeks to see exactly what's going on. So let's look at our exports. They were down compared to May. So we exported 7.3% of the production, about 85.7 million pounds. That's only about 5 or 6 million pounds above normal. So again, change over the year is still very positive because that's the last 4 months. And year to date, the prior year is also positive. Now, butter, we actually exported a bit more. We're at 3.9% of production. So this is how the June numbers all came together, and what we're interested in is the yellow from the Dairy Products Report, which is how much everything was produced. So when we look at cheese, I want to kind of dig into that just a little bit. If we compare it to last month, we were down about 10 million pounds, and that's at 1.17 to 1.16. Exports actually declined about 17 million because last month we're about 22, this month we're about 5. So that means we have a net increase of supply of about 7 million pounds because if we would have decreased here, increased there. Now what was interesting is that the change in stocks actually went down about 2 million pounds. So that's going to suggest that demand must have been very good. When I got this dairy products report, it was difficult to kind of sort through everything because the production came in lower than what StoneX had. So normally when we see lower production, we assume that we've got lower demand. But in this case, I think I'm going to conclude that demand must have been good because we should have actually been building cold storage and we didn't. If we look at the amount of milk that went into cheese, a little bit less than trend line, a little bit less than we had seasonally expected. So that means there were other demands on milk other than cheese. And we kind of saw that in the federal milk marketing order because this utilization actually came down just a little bit. So again, not big swings, but just enough to suggest that we did not have as much cheese produced as we could have. Now, if we look at daily cheese production, I mean, this is an outlier. This is really low. It came in below where we expected and way below trend line. And what I've done with my system is I've asked it to kind of look at different breakpoints and is there one that provides a better fit than an overall one. And we actually have a breakpoint here sometime in 2022. So we were increasing significantly and now we've basically gone flat. Last year was a little bit of an outlier, but that's because there's very small standard deviation there. Now, if we have new cheese plants come online, we're going to expect this cheese production to go up. And that was the whole story that we had at the end of last year. Everybody was concerned about these cheese plants coming online. But the current situation, like I say, it started about almost 3 years ago to where we've really hampered down the cheese production, but it was the overhang of stocks that actually kept prices down for a while. So if we look at this rolling disappearance, and this is showing exactly the same thing, all of a sudden the blue line, which is the disappearance, is above the black line. suggesting that, we've had a bit of a change here. And if we look at just what we have for production in June, about 38.7 million pounds a day, and our overall disappearance was 39.16. So we are not making enough cheese to keep up with demand at the moment. We've got about 36 days of excess cheese in cold storage. And this is also going to suggest that we need about 9.4 million cows. Right now we're 9.33 and change. We're about 70,000 cows short of meeting this demand. I like to look at the ratio of the different cheeses. Italian was right on trend line, and that's also got to do with, some of the exports or mozzarella. The American style cheeses, which include cheddar, were down a little bit, but the one that's off trend line and kind of pulling things down is the cheddar percentage. The other cheeses was up just a little bit, but they represent, about 17% of the total cheese. If we look at the American production, the same thing. We had a split here in 2022. This is a significant outlier in 2023. But cheddar didn't have that same split. It just basically is down right now. It's a way off trend line, way below the seasonal level. But this started, just this year. Italian type cheeses are just a little bit below trend line. Again, everything was down just a little bit, but they are, seasonally down from where we thought they would be. And then whey was actually right on trend line. That was kind of interesting. Came in a little higher than we thought it would from the seasonal adjusted number, but right on trend line. And this has been declining a little bit, about 0.5% per year. Here are the cheese prices by month relative to the spot market. And so really since the 1st of May, we've been in this really choppy sideways, and actually you could argue a little bit declining trend line here. And we've been right at $2, $1.97, since the beginning of May. It was back in, earlier part of the year, we were in the $1.50s, $1.60s kind of range. So let's move to butter, and this is a graph of butter as a percentage of total fat. It actually came down a little bit, which would suggest that there are other demands on fat, but it was pretty close to trend line, and this is actually reducing a little bit, and part of that is because there's so much fat being made. And here is the percent fat. We were, as an outlier, we've seen this graph before, but percent fat was 4.1, which is just up significantly from where we were, 9-10 years ago. We were 3.6 and change. So daily butter production is very seasonal. Came in right at kind of the trend line, a little bit lower than we thought it would given the seasonal number. But again, it's very seasonal, and we don't see any significant outliers on that other than back here in 2020. The ratio of butter to non-fat dry milk kind of gives us an idea of where the butter is coming from. And so this was an outlier to the upside. So that means that we're not going to be separating butter and non-fat dry milk, but in fact the butter is going to be coming from cream from other sources. The relative value of butter is kind of holding, maybe dropping a little bit relative to non-fat dry milk. It all changed in 2022, but it's come down just a little bit, way off of the highs that we had back, in October of a year ago. So what are the other demands on milk and fat if it wasn't for butter and cheese? Well, ice cream came in right at the trend line, a little bit lower than we thought. And what's interesting is ice cream production is actually dropping about 1.5% per year. So that's really starting to fall out of flavor, so to speak. Yogurt production came in right on trend line, a little bit lower than we thought it would. But the one that's really an outlier to the upside is cottage cheese. So we'd seen this once or twice before, but right now this is, much, much higher than it's ever been. Again, a little bit lower than we thought it would be. We thought it would, hold that based on what normally happens in June, but way above trend line. All right, that gives you an idea of what happened in the dairy products report. Overall, it is probably bullish. Right now, the market would suggest that. So we had both the dairy products and the global dairy trade. Today we're going to have the 1st August National Dairy Sales Report. We're really not going to have another big report until the milk production report, but my next milk market tidbit will be on the federal milk marketing data.